the supporting cast of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's funny because it actually sounds like a really simple thing when you just say it like that. But this is a topic that has become steadily more heated, entrenched, and let's face it, downright confusing over time. You see, in this respect, Sonic the Hedgehog is a very different ballgame when compared to pretty much any other franchise or series in all of fictional entertainment. No matter what story they're telling, the type of characters that inhabit their world, or the genre of entertainment we file them away under. In other franchises, it's perfectly normal to have multiple beloved characters, besides the main protagonist, involved in multiple facets of the story, experiencing character growth through their very own arcs, shaping the overall story in their own way. And in the case of video games, are often playable characters themselves. This has been the tried and tested formula for building a franchise for a very long time now, and there's a lot of money to be made doing this. While you wouldn't know it by looking at things now, this actually used to be the case for the Sonic series as well. In 2021, Sonic celebrated his 30th anniversary, and of those 30 years, the second 15 are pretty much unrecognizable from the first. And no, this isn't a potshot at the modern games in their totality, or anyone who likes them. This video isn't about that. It's just pretty irrefutable that since Sonic 06, Sonic's supporting cast have been pretty much missing in action, taking the bullet for the myriad of other mistakes made with the series. And in a classic case of you don't know what you have until it's gone, many of us now find ourselves sorely missing a time when Sonic's supporting cast were playable, well written, and most importantly, crucial to the story. Once Sega knew they were onto something special as the original Sonic the Hedgehog game took the world by storm back in '91, it didn't take long before their focus moved to expanding the Blue Dude's universe, and Sonic's brand new sidekick, Tails, was introduced just a year later in the very next game. The introduction of Tails was a great way of progressing Sonic as a character. It showed a softer side to his brash, carefree 90s attitude, and was the first major step towards him being seen as a mentor, someone who had the power and charisma to influence those around him, helping them to become their best selves. I mean, it took many years before I finally learned most people don't actually run like this. Such was the sway this spiky blue ball of attitude had on us 90s kids. See, Sonic running around on his own, fighting Robotnik and blowing up his operations, gives off more of a lone wolf vigilante vibe. But from the addition of Tails onward, this was the move toward making it clear that Sonic is a true hero, a team player. This big brother/mentor relationship exploded into every facet of Sonic media back in the 90s. And even though it couldn't be taken advantage of fully in the games just yet, the foundation for future stories and character growth was firmly set. The next step was to introduce some form of love interest and a rival for our blue hero. Enter Sonic CD and the introduction of Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. Unfortunately, the niche level status of the Sega CD add-on meant that nowhere near as many people got to play Sonic CD as the games on the main system. And this meant that for a lot of people, myself included, an introduction to these characters was actually handled by the comics instead. And it wasn't until much later that I actually got to go back and play CD. But it was here that Amy's one-way love affair with Earth's hunkiest blue ball and the hidden misuse of the awesome Metal Sonic began. Just a damsel in distress? For now. A slightly underutilized opportunity? Again, for now. But Sega were eager to get this rival and character introduction thing right in the classic era, and Metal Sonic's pretty absent debut seemed to teach them all the lessons they needed for their next attempt. When Knuckles punched his way onto the scene back in '94, the buzz was just off the scale. Think the hype around him for the second movie now, but multiplied by 10. There was no internet back then, nothing passive whatsoever to help spread the word and build hype for this brand new character in the Sonic universe. And yet, every kid you met in the neighborhood or on the good old school playground was in a frenzy about this awesome looking red badass that just did a smash mouth on Super Sonic. No longer were there huge arguments over who got to be Sonic when role-playing with your friends. Now everyone wanted to be this mysterious tough guy with his own private island. Knuckles was the new cool kid on the block. and us 90s kids couldn't get enough swag with his face on it, between toys, comics, games, and even being unceremoniously tacked on to his very own spin-off. His seamless integration into the classic Sonic formula, combined with an engaging backstory and mysterious lore-filled home, made Knuckles a fantastic addition to the series. And the concentrated effort made in Sonic 3 to expand Sonic's universe through in-depth storytelling would go on to fuel some of the series' most engaging narratives for years to come.
When I was a kid, first grade, second grade-ish, me and my friends, we used to roleplay a lot during break time. And whenever the theme, I guess, was Sonic, I would always be Sonic, because he's my boy, he's my favorite character. Now, I got to be the main character, not because I was the Sonic guy, but because no one else even wanted to be Sonic. And that's crazy, right? Like, we would also play Batman, and there would always be fighting over who gets to be Bruce, but that never happened with Sonic, because every single one of us had a specific character that they really loved and connected with. My best friend, whom I still talk to this day, would always be Shadow, because he's kind of tragic, he has a gun, he can control the time, he skates all over the place, he's a cool guy. My other friend, he was the big, tough guy, and he really loved Knuckles because of that. And there was the little smart kid with the glasses who would always gravitate towards Tails because he's this smart underdog who always uses his head for stuff. It got to a point where I would just start introducing some lesser known characters like Fang or Mighty, so everyone would just have more options to play. People would deadass call my house like, hey yo, show me some new characters, and I would tell them some and they would Google it for hours like, oh my god, there's this dude who's like an evil Sonic, that's so cool. This one guy loved Scourge so much he got into Archie. Kinda unfortunate given what happens to Scourge, but still. Out of all the common Sonic talking points, rough transitions, serious stories, all that, Sonic's stupid friends is the one that actually bugs me, because I know it's bullshit. I know for a fact that these stupid friends are some of the greatest assets this franchise has ever had, who have inspired thousands to create art, write stories, and even create their own characters. And the reason that millions of people hold this franchise so near and dear to their heart.
After the dizzying highs of the Death Egg saga and all the awesome characters we were introduced to along the way, Sonic entered a kind of transitional period in the mid-90s. And it's no coincidence that this aimless period in Sonic's life coincided perfectly with Sega's struggles in the console market. Disagreements in the chain of management, a lack of synchronized thinking between different regional operations, and a doubling down on failing strategies, while simultaneously trying to keep up with competitors and release a proper next-gen machine, left players skeptical and confused. A never-ending list of expensive add-ons for aging hardware, and an obvious lack of confidence or commitment with their newest machine meant that the trigger was never truly pulled on progressing Sonic's universe, and we instead got these kind of limbo titles, like Knuckles' Chaotix and 3D Blast. Most beautiful 3D Sonic design ever, by the way. While any true sequels were ultimately cancelled, and the Saturn would only ever see ports, compilations, and racing games. Yeah, Sonic's stupid friends were there physically, but not in any meaningful way. Sound kinda familiar? The Sonic franchise was hurting long before the so-called Dark Age. Pretty much every decade of the Blue Blur has had its low points. But a vision for the evolution of Sonic was still burning bright in Sonic Team, and it was only a matter of time before the story-centric approach of Sonic 3 and Knuckles was taken to the next level.
One of my favorite things about Sonic the Hedgehog as a franchise is the characters. There are so many great ones, and I feel like a lot of them don't get the same amount of attention or support that they once used to get. If you know me, or have at least had a little bit of a conversation with me about Sonic the Hedgehog, you know that my favorite game is Sonic Adventure. One of my favorite things about that game is that the usage of characters does not seem to fail in any sort of facet. You see, every single character is used for a purpose. They're not just thrown in there just to be in there, they're in there so you could actually learn more about them and play as them. That's what makes characters so fundamentally good. The funniest thing about Sonic Adventure is that it's not just Sonic's adventure. In order to complete the entire game, you have to play as every single character that the game has to offer, and that includes Big the Cat. Though you may not like him, you have to play as him. Deal with it. Each and every single one of these characters are viewed as an intricate part of the story that matters. That's what made Sonic characters so likable, at least to me. Now we have games like Sonic Generations, which I'm going to talk about later, that kind of uses characters as just kind of paperweights. They're just there to offer up a nice little eye candy like, hey, I remember that character, not really much as to give them any more background, story, or any further development. Now, in making this statement, I'm not saying that Sonic Generations is a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. However, I'm saying that in terms of story and usage of characters, it is very lackluster. The game itself presents a number of characters in which they don't really go into any further. You see, the only characters that we actually as the audience are really supposed to care about are Sonic, Tails, and Tails. That's really the bare minimum. These two games express two very different ways of using characters, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think Sonic Adventure does a better job in making you actually care more about the story. I would actually even take it a step further and argue that Sonic Adventure may have been a blueprint for what Sega wanted to do with Sonic characters going forward. As we could see from games like Sonic Adventure 2, they expressed a lot of interest and care on actually developing characters to make you actually care about them. Also, games like Sonic Heroes and even Shadow the Hedgehog, though it may not be a fan favorite, followed the similar format. These games made you play out the story of different characters in order to figure out what these characters were for, how they got here, and what their purpose is for the story. However, the biggest driving point that made these characters so worthwhile, and maybe the reason why you like them so much, is that you didn't just learn about their experiences, you learned by doing their experiences. You played as these characters, and you experienced exactly what they experienced. You, as the player, were able to witness the outcome of whatever your actions just were. Sonic characters have begun as characters that have actually mattered to the core story into ones that have just devolved into this background character eye candy role. But of course, one could argue and say that, hey, you know, at least they're there in the first place.
By the time Sonic Adventure rolled around at the end of the decade, Sonic had already missed the opportunity his competitors had to break in at the pretty ugly bleeding edge of interactive entertainment, in terms of hardware that could fully support proper recorded voice lines and deliver fully 3D gameplay and cutscenes. Sonic, or more accurately Sega, was late to the party. But with Sonic Adventure, there's no denying they held nothing back, both in terms of narrative and gameplay. I mean, sure, the attitude of a lot of people towards this game is that they can happily play as Sonic over and over, but they just can't dig the gameplay styles for the other characters. And while I don't agree with this personally, that's completely fair enough. Sonic Adventure was a bit of a souped-up tech demo aimed at third-party developers to help demonstrate what the Dreamcast was capable of, and that mishmash of genres just wasn't for everyone. But in terms of Sonic Adventure's story, this is where the incentive for everyone to complete the game with every character is. You only unlock the true last boss and ending if you do, and there is some seriously amazing stories, with truly excellent character progression tucked away in these parallel events. Knuckles' backstory and the lore of Angel Island paves the way for pretty much all of the major plot points in this game. We get to see Knuckles' clash with Sonic rehashed in full 3D, and we get a more in-depth look at the violent history of Angel Island, and how its clans warred over the power of the Emeralds, ultimately bringing destruction upon themselves. We got to see Tails grow from a nervous sidekick who lives in the hero's shadow into a true hero in his own right, standing up to Eggman alone by using Sonic's teachings to find the courage to believe in himself, with this newfound confidence and acceptance of his own strengths helping to grow and shape his character for the next game. Amy discovers that she can be more than just a damsel in distress, defined in these stories merely by her love for Sonic, with an unquestionable sense of right and wrong. And by standing up for defenseless innocence, she discovers her own inner strength, and that she's more than capable of standing on her own 2 feet. We also discover that Amy is able to relate and connect with others on a much deeper level than anyone else in the series, as we watch her set Gamma, an Eggman robot, off on its very own journey of moral and emotional discovery as it struggles with becoming self-aware. A surprisingly deep and somewhat dark story when you really get into the nitty-gritty of it. Oh, and Big. Big was there too.
When I think of the supporting cast for Sonic, the names that come to mind immediately are usually Tails, Amy, Knuckles, Metal Sonic. But if I had to think of the one that I think has the most heart for me, it's a toss-up between Gamma and Shadow. But I honestly have to lean more on Gamma when we talk about Omega. Now, I tend to view Omega as an extension of Gamma. His story has a very clean thoroughfare between what we see in Sonic Battle into what we get in Sonic Heroes. But to put it briefly, Gamma was a character who was forced into the servitude of Dr. Eggman, not understanding the abuse that he was going through. He kind of conceptualized what was happening as he watched all of the other E-Series robots get terminated and teleported away or otherwise experimented on. And honestly, whenever I see those scenes, it kind of hurts because we don't get to see Gamma emote all that much. We just have to kind of piece together what's going on in his head. And a lot of this does get carried on into Omega. Gamma did kill himself in the end of Sonic Adventure 1, but Eggman doesn't really know that. As a result, he doesn't realize that the E-Series is actually a set of robots that will turn on their masters. He never gets that information. Because of that, he ends up going on and making another E-Series robot in Omega. And of course, just like with Gamma, Omega ends up fighting back. He decides that he doesn't want to be one of Eggman's servants anymore. The abuse that we see in Gamma and the first set of E-Series robots carries over into Omega's story as we see him just set to be shut down in front of Shadow, and he grows to resent this because Eggman apparently thinks that programming his creations with emotions is a good idea. And that heart and soul in Gamma, watching him slowly come to realize what he is and what's wrong about it, gets carried over amazingly in Omega, but in a very different way. I think the moment that means the most to me where Omega's concerned is when we see him fighting Mephiles in Sonic 06. Now, I know a lot of people hate this game, but when Omega realizes while fighting Mephiles using Shadow's body that he was designed by Eggman for the sole purpose of killing Shadow if need be, he quickly puts two and two together that in the future, only one person can really incapacitate Shadow if Sonic's not in the picture, and it's him. And despite the bad voice acting, you can tell that it pains his character to communicate to Shadow that in the future, it's him who betrays his friend. And much like with the earlier scenes with Gamma, since he's a robot, we have to piece together what's going on in his head. We don't get facial expressions or emotes the way we do with other characters, and in a lot of ways, that makes scenes like these more powerful. A lot of people don't like Sonic's supporting cast, but if I'm being honest, there is no Sonic game where the supporting cast are not the ones that bring the heart to the story. Whether it's Knuckles in Sonic 3, or Shadow in Sonic Adventure 2, or Gamma and Omega in their respective games, the supporting characters are always where we get the heart of the story. Sonic's just where we get the action.
Sonic Adventure 1, a lot like the original Sonic the Hedgehog, was a crazy experiment. One where Sonic Team threw pretty much everything at the wall, just to see what would stick. Its whole format of 6 different characters with intertwined narratives and wildly different playstyles was pretty unconventional, and a lot like how Sonic 2 followed its predecessor, Adventure 2 would streamline this whole process, and in my view, lean into the strengths of Adventure, while simultaneously trimming the stuff people griped about most. As a result, the story was now split in 2 as opposed to 6, even though there were still 6 playable characters, and players now get to experience both the hero and dark sides of the narrative, an important point I'll be coming back to later. This was also the first game where we actually got to play as Eggman, so already the best Sonic game ever.
I am the Eggman. That's what I am. I am the Eggman. I got the master plan.
While we welcome two awesome newcomers in Shadow the Hedgehog and Rouge the Bat, the great character progression for existing characters is also carried forward and built upon. Tails is now a freaking technical badass, running around with his transforming plane mech hybrid and pretty much helping Sonic run the show by devising awesome plans and using his technical wizardry to create a path for the others and move the story forward. Rather than going around trying to be Sonic, Tails has finally embraced what makes him special. He'll never be as fast as Sonic or as strong as Knuckles, but you can bet he'll get the job done anyway, using his prodigy brain and engineering skills. For me, this was the pinnacle of Tails as a character. He now believably stands on his own two tails, and I wouldn't have been surprised at all at this point had he gotten his own spin-off game. He did it before, after all. Knuckles is once again back chasing pieces of the Master Emerald, and while that may be a bit lazy in terms of narrative, I still got a great kick out of seeing his relationship with Sonic evolve and grow, from best buds one minute to straight up bitch fights the next. You'll love to see it. He was also thrown into a treasure hunting rivalry / romance angle with newcomer Rouge, and again, I think this created some cool opportunities for both of these characters going forward. Knuckles' strict moral code, dry personality, and obligation to his duty clashes perfectly with Rouge's sassy, abrasive, by any means necessary philosophy. And whether they would ever hook up or not, I think their dynamic would still make for some really entertaining interactions, no matter which side of the conflict they find themselves on. Plus, a lot of the lore required for this story comes from Knuckles. Just saying. Then, of course, we have Shadow. I've spoken about this guy a lot in the channel's relatively short existence, and frankly, I'm absolutely, seriously never gonna get tired of it. Shadow personifies the shonen style storytelling that the adventure games are known for, and while the story of the first adventure game was pretty dark overall, Shadow's backstory and intentions for the world push this even further. Shadow is struggling with grief for his closest friend, who was gunned down before his eyes during a tragic incident 50 years earlier. And after being cryogenically frozen ever since, his muddled memories of past events sees him carry out his creator's master plan to destroy the world, revenge for the murder of his granddaughter. But as time goes by, cracks start to appear in Shadow's external facade, and who he is as a person starts to conflict with what he's doing. He can't just stand by and leave Rouge to die on Prison Island. His hatred for Sonic ultimately turns into respect and begrudging admiration. And once he learns the truth about what he really promised Maria 50 years ago, he immediately jumps into action to right his wrongs, throwing himself in harm's way to protect others, before ultimately sacrificing himself to save the planet his best friend loved. Once he stopped being defined by his grief, Shadow's noble traits and unshakable loyalty to his friends shined through above anything else, and it was these glimpses of his actual personality that propelled him to being one of the most popular Sonic characters of all time, and gave his character a fantastic direction to go in future games. Shadow's story isn't really all that special and narrative. Revenge arcs are nothing new, and have been done many times. But it was how his character progressed, and the fact that the audience actually got to see and experience his journey, that portrayed his character so well, cementing him in the hearts of many Sonic fans forever. Were it not for the fact that Sonic Adventure 2 allowed us all to experience events from both sides, I honestly don't think people would have been half as sympathetic for Shadow, or that his character would have come off anywhere near as well. Experience through doing, and experience through seeing, allowed for a deeper connection between the audience and these characters. A connection that has been well and truly severed now. Sonic games used to actually have a message, one that went far beyond just a simple good versus bad. Don't judge a book by its cover. Look out for and protect those who can't protect themselves. Believe in yourself and embrace your own strengths. Dealing with grief, protecting your friends, and honoring one's word. Oh, and fishing. The things these characters did and said actually used to matter, enabling the telling of much more engaging stories. Stories that had some semblance of depth. The whole point of Sonic used to be that he brought out the best in those around him, who would then in turn bring out the best in him. And that awesome synergy was truly special.
Guys, if I have to listen to one more game journalist complain about Sonic having friends, I'm gonna lose it. Seriously, I'm gonna become the Joker. Sonic Team has been gaslit into thinking that its expansive roster of supporting cast members is a bad thing, because everyone knows that having a lot of characters is just objectively bad. I mean, just look at Avengers Endgame. That movie had like 30 plus superheroes fighting alongside each other. It totally didn't earn a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, or generate over $2.7 billion in ticket sales, or beat out Avatar as the highest grossing movie of all time at one point. And those same people that criticize Sonic for having too many characters totally don't turn around and gush over all the superheroes being featured in whatever new Marvel movie comes out. Definitely not. There's this weird double standard when it comes to Sonic. While all the other video game characters get to hang out with their friends outside, Sonic is grounded in his room, cut off from the outside world. It's an opinion that's just been accepted by the general public despite not really having any solid reasoning for it. And this has greatly affected how Sonic Team makes decisions when it comes to the supporting cast of the more recent games. In these recent games, where there are a handful of characters, they essentially take a back seat in the story. Most of the time, you'd be able to write them out and nothing would change. And in the games where they limit the supporting cast to only a couple of friend characters to avoid angering people that never cared for the Sonic series in the first place, well, you could probably even write them out there too and nothing would change. But there used to be a time where Sonic's friends actually mattered. They participated in the story, added depth to the plot, had conflicting motivations, and just made me feel something when playing these damn games. The entire series up until the Meta era did this really well. But I think my favorite era when it comes to the supporting cast was the Adventure era. This includes both Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and hey, I'll even lump Sonic Heroes in there too. The whole premise of that game was the cool combination of characters and teams after all. The common denominator between these games is that most of these friend characters were playable, and their stories would intersect at certain points, leading to the player piecing together the bigger picture of the narrative and having an understanding of the story from multiple angles. The part in Sonic Adventure 1 where Sonic and Knuckles encounter each other for the first time and get into a fight due to a misunderstanding. You get to see this conflict from both sides, and it makes you understand Knuckles and his motivations better because of it. It shows that Knuckles is a gullible character, falling for Eggman's exact same trick once again, but it also shows you his desperation to find and repair the lost pieces of the Master Emerald, so him being so quick to throw hands with Sonic makes a lot more sense because of it. How about the time when Sonic and Shadow face off for the third time at the end of the game on the Space Colony arc? Having the ability to get the perspective of both of these characters by playing each of their stories makes it so that you have stakes in both sides. It's intense because you understand both of these characters and their motivations so well, and it just tears you up inside because the game writes these characters in a way that allows you to sympathize for both of them, even though their motivations are polar opposite. Or how about basically any time two teams encounter each other in Sonic Heroes? I'll admit that these conflicts seem kind of forced, but the tone of the game is definitely a lot more laid back anyways. And I really just appreciate seeing these characters interact with each other more after I got to know a lot of them so well in both of the adventure games. But when it really comes down to it, all of these characters do in fact have a purpose for being there. Whether it's to put a stop to Eggman's plans, find out about a character's past, reunite with the missing friend, or just pay rent. The writers actually took the time to give these characters a reason to be there instead of just throwing them into the background as decoration. In my opinion, Sonic's roster of supporting cast is at its best in this era. I mean, there's a reason that the largest output of Sonic OCs came from this time period. The characters, their personalities, and designs were just straight up inspiring to a lot of fans. And a lot of people just wanted to use that inspiration to make their own characters. Let Sonic have friends. Seriously.
Sonic Heroes was in a tough position right from the start. Its story having to walk the tightrope of being a sequel to Adventure 2, whether anyone at Sega wants to admit it or not, and being the jump-on point for lots of new players as the franchise made its multi-platform debut. Players who may never have even played a Sonic game before, never mind knowing what happened in the two Adventure games. This meant the story had to somehow cater for both returning and new players. A difficult task. As a result, Heroes had to dial back the complexity of its story compared to its predecessors, while also attempting to move its characters forward from their narrative arcs in the previous game. A lot of people complain about the dumbed down writing and less meaningful interactions between everyone, but there is also a lot of good done for the progression of these characters. Tails may have taken a step back and become slightly less independent. Similarly, Knuckles now has an unexplained reason for being happy to abandon Angel Island. But the whole corny message of friendship and teamwork that this game unashamedly shoves down our throats actually works out really well for Team Sonic. The broship between these three dudes is now pretty damn endearing, especially in the little back and forwards dialogue during gameplay. All three look entirely comfortable in each other's company, and Sonic's leadership skills are pushed that much further too. Shadow experiences a bit of a soft reset with the whole Amnesia Am I an Android arc. This wouldn't be fully resolved until his own spin-off game a couple of years later. But the ragtag Team Dark formed by Rouge, consisting of her, Shadow, and newcomer Omega, have probably some of the best lines and interactions in the game. This team grew on me more than I can ever put into words, and watching them grow closer over the course of Heroes was very enjoyable for me, not to mention setting them up perfectly for some great stories later. While, in my view, Amy had her character slightly regress, teaming her up with Cream and Big actually worked far better than I ever would have thought. Her big sister relationship with Cream, and Big's watchful big brother role to them both, was a nice way to use all three for this game. Even the Chaotix, a pretty obscure group of Sonic characters by all accounts, were revived and given new purpose for this game. Known mainly by the 10 people who owned a 32X, and by those of us who met them in the comics, Vector, Espio, and Charmy now run their own detective agency, and are hired to rescue a mysterious client. And while their stage objectives were complete dogshit, I really liked these characterizations, and the whole detectives angle. Their interactions were consistently pretty funny, and I would have really liked to have seen more of them in the years that followed. My point is, even with a heavily reined-in story and pretty basic writing, this game still made 12 characters seem pretty important to the overall story. Plus, Neo Metal was awesome, and a long overdue appearance for Metal. I personally would have done a lot more with him, but on balance, given the state of play at the time, I'm just pretty happy he was included at all.
When it comes to the extended cast, it's really hard for me to pick between who is my favorite character, but one thing I do know for certain is that the other two hedgehogs of the trio are some badass characters. In terms of Shadow, I've always really loved his character, and in terms of his introduction in SA2, it really left an impact on me recently when I was playing the game, having such a simple yet effective redemption arc. In my opinion, Shiro Miyakawa wrote him fantastically, making you really feel and root for him by the time the Biolizard fight happens. It really is something special. While Shadow the Hedgehog the game gets a lot of flack, I do think he has some really good scenes in that game, although it is mixed between the not so good scenes. And do I even say more about his story in 06? Shadow overall has always been a badass character that really has held a place in my heart, and with getting back into the series last summer and fully playing through SA2 this time, it wasn't nostalgia talking at all. His arc was really impressive to me, layering that with his cool as all get out character design that easily distinguishes his role in the franchise as the counter to Sonic, although being much more than that. It's easy to see why Shadow is as recognizable or very close to Sonic himself. Silver on the other hand, well, I always kind of thought he was a beta and stunk in the more recent games, but playing through 06 for the first time and really getting to see what he was all about in his game, oh boy was I wrong. Silver is determined in 06. He is there to get stuff done and does not mess around, and I absolutely love that in his character. His voice lines are just so good in this game too. He really does feel heavily inspired from future Trunks from Dragon Ball Z, not only in his introduction in the story, but also his intense yet naive personality. Silver's overall story has become my personal favorite out of the 3 story parts in the game, because his gameplay is just so darn fun in my opinion. I know the slower pace may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoyed the more slow-paced, physics-based, puzzle platforming hybrid. Try saying that a few times in a row. Another big thing for me regarding Silver's gameplay was I really enjoy exploring the locales in Sonic games in general, because no matter the game, the locations are always beautiful, so having a full playstyle based around that with a familiar point A to point B routing of traditional Sonic is a dream come true for me personally. Of course, it could have been fleshed out more, and it seemed like there was going to be more, but I do hope one day that Silver does get another shot as a gameplay style, as I still think there's a lot of potential with his puzzle-based levels, his setting in the future, and the kind of characters we could meet there. Oh, a man can dream. Either way, Shadow and Silver not only look cool, but definitely play the part, making them some of my favorite characters out of the awesome extended cast of the Sonic franchise.
As many of you probably already know, it can be pretty hard to talk about 06 in this fandom without feeling like you're staring down the barrel of a gun. Unfinished, broken, terrible writing, terrible story. This design, big, wet, juicy, dirty, slobbery, made everyone watch, crime against nature kisses. And while most of these statements are, true, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Shadow and Silver stories were great. Most people who dismiss 06 in its entirety point to scenes like this as the problem, and really, they're not wrong. But for me, there are even more scenes where frankly, I think more damage is done to certain characters than any wet, sinful face smooshing could ever do. And 90% of them are in Sonic's story. From what I understand, Shiro Miyakawa, the lead writer behind the godly Sonic Adventure 2, was heavily involved in writing both Shadow and Silver stories, but not so much in Sonic's, which could explain a lot really when you look back at the game. Shadow gets this really great progression of his character, where he's finally moved on and accepted the loss of Maria, joining the very organization responsible for her death, as they are the best way he has to continue fulfilling his promise of protecting the planet. And he gets to do so alongside his closest friends. Shadow is now comfortable in his own skin, and finally doing the very thing he was created to do, helping people. His noble characteristics and unshakable conviction, plain as day for all to see. Silver gets a pretty bad rap from his debut in 06, his boogie boss fight souring most people who had to suffer through it. But when you actually play through his story and see firsthand what motivates him and fuels him on this tunnel vision mission to kill Sonic, I came away actually understanding his point of view. Silver comes from a bleak and barren world, one where people are living in perpetual fear of a never-ending cycle of death and destruction. And here comes this shady guy with no mouth. Totally normal, nothing suspicious here. He may even be very self-conscious about it. Best not to stare. Anyway, here comes Smiley, offering Silver the answers to all his problems. Of course he's gonna go smash Sonic to death with patio furniture and ESP. But Silver quickly starts to show hesitation for this plan. Something doesn't feel right to him. And with a quick pep talk from Blaze, and some yelling from Amy, he's set on the right path. Silver grows from this initially very naive approach and learns that the truth is far more important than blindly reaching a goal. After having some sense knocked into him by Shadow,
A boot to the head.
the two team up on a mission to learn the truth by going to the past together. Seriously, why were these two never paired up again? I found their dynamic really interesting, and I think it would have been great for both Silver and Shadow's characters to have Shadow serve as a kind of mentor figure to him. Silver needed to grow and mature as a character, and Shadow needed someone he could take under his wing to help emphasize this evolved version of his character, similar to how Sonic needed Tails. By the end, Silver is on the right side of the conflict, and even suffers his own crushing loss, as he watches his big sister figure sacrifice herself to stop Iblis. And yet, even after all of his suffering, Silver is the one to lift everyone up during the game's darkest hour. His unwavering optimism rallying everyone just as all hope seemed to be lost. And I think this is the side of Silver Miyakawa wanted people to leave this game with. Things just didn't play out that way.
Silver is the best Sonic character, and if you disagree, you're wrong. To start off, let's take a dive into the history of Silver as a character, looking at how he has evolved as a character in his most notable appearances. We first begin with Sonic 06. Silver sort of had a similar character arc to Knuckles in a way if you think about it, being first tricked by Mephiles to assassinate Sonic, but then learning that Mephiles lied to him and became a hero. Silver became a hero, not Mephiles. The difference between Knuckles' and Silver's situations is that Silver had a more serious and lethal reason for believing Mephiles. Silver came from the future, which we see as Crisis City in 06, a world that's been destroyed by Iblis, and the reason Silver wants to take down Sonic is because he believes Sonic is the cause of all this, for triggering Iblis. At the end of Sonic 06, Silver is returned to his timeline in the future, where Iblis no longer exists, and there are blue skies and rainbows for Silver, but sadly, loses his only friend, Blaze the Cat. Looking at Silver's next substantial appearance is a game which everybody seems to forget about, that being Sonic Rivals for the PSP. Canonically, this game takes place after the events of Sonic 06, and explains why Silver and Sonic know each other, even after time was wiped in 06. There isn't much to look at in Rivals. Silver is very stubborn and reluctant to getting help from Sonic to defeat Eggman Nega, but eventually comes to trust Sonic and become friends. This also carries on in the sequel, Sonic Rivals 2, where there's still a bit of rivalry between Silver and Sonic, but in the end, they are still friends. Silver's next substantial appearance takes us to the meta era of Sonic in Sonic Generations. Just a side note, Silver also appears in Sonic Plus DS and carries on the canon from the Rivals series in that he and Sonic are friends. Anyways, back to Generations, we see Silver as a rival to Sonic as this is a blast of the past, but at the end of the game, Silver is once again a friend. Just like all the other characters in this game, Silver does pretty much nothing in Generations except shout a few pointless words to Sonic, which takes us to Sonic Forces. This game is definitely a big step up for many characters in terms of their roles in the story, and the same goes for Silver. Throughout Forces, we see Silver using his telekinesis powers to aid in the war, even going in a 1v1 with Infinite, which doesn't end well. Silver is quite a blunt character in Sonic Forces who doesn't mess around and just wants to get the war over and done with. Silver definitely shows some sadness when they learn what Eggman is planning to do with Sonic after defeat, but still manages to stay strong. Silver's latest appearance brings us to Team Sonic Racing. Silver is a rival at times, but is still an ally in TSR, and helps a lot to the plot by seeing through Eggman's plans when no one else could. Unfortunately, there is one thing about Silver in TSR which I dislike. Over Silver's lifespan in the series so far, he has had a total of 3 voice actors in English. Pete Capella up until 2010, Quinton Flynn up until 2019, and then Bryce Papenbrook in TSR. I think Pete Capella nailed Silver's voice, and Quinton was still good as Silver, but Bryce does not suit Silver at all. He sounds too much like he's trying to sound like Sonic, and it just doesn't work at all. If I had to give my favourite thing about Silver, that would have to be his design. When designing Silver, the developers gave him a more futuristic look to suit the context. Silver is a character from the future, which also links with his abilities too. Looking at Silver, sort of reminds me of Metropolis from Sonic Forces in a way. The whites and blues and the floating cars really seem to fit well with Silver. To end off, because I might have gone on for too long now, Silver has definitely had a bit of controversy about him, due to his backstory and just the fact that he originated from Sonic 06. But I believe Silver is one of the coolest characters in the entire series. His abilities and design really sell him to me. I hope you can see an expansion of his playstyle one day in a future title, but that's all from me. Peace!
Sonic Unleashed is a game of two sides for me. No, not in the way you're thinking. This isn't about day versus night, Unleashed versus Unweashed, or hedgehogs versus werehogs. I'm more so talking about what this game represents in the series. A triumphant return for Sonic after the disastrous reception of 06? Definitely. The beginning of the end for the supporting cast of Sonic. Unfortunately, yeah. Just so we're all on the same page, I really like Sonic Unleashed. The boost gameplay was still all shiny and new. Like holy shit, we'd never seen Sonic move this fast before. And I always have a great time playing through it. But I'm also not going to accept for 1 minute that this game wasn't the death knell for Sonic's friends. At the time, we had no way of knowing that the Sonic-only approach that was born in this game would continue for at least 14 years. Tails being a narrative plot device, the extended cast simply serving as cheerleaders, the complete removal of any seriousness from the character of Eggman. All of these trends, the ones a lot of us complain about now, started in Unleashed. Silver obviously didn't turn up. 06 needed to be buried and he was the poster boy. But where the hell was Shadow? what did he do wrong? Seems hard to believe that wherever he was, he didn't notice the planet being literally ripped apart. And how could they finally come up with a great playstyle for Knuckles, and then not include Knuckles? But we all know why he and many others weren't there. The Sonic Stupid Friends racket that plagued the mid-2000s. Unleashed was high budget, beautifully presented, and a hell of a lot of fun to play. But from here on out, the only way for Sonic's supporting cast was down.
The Sonic fanbase is quite a mixed bag for Sonic fans. Some take a look at Sonic's friends and see unwrapped potential with interesting stories to be told. Others just see nuisances that only slow Sonic down. Personally, I think Sonic's friends are a good addition to the series, and anyone who disagrees can come fight me in a dimly lit alley. Recently, Sega has been keeping Sonic's friends to the sidelines, only bringing out certain characters when they feel like they might have a relevance to the plot, just to underutilize them in poorly written conflicts and leave them to hide behind Sonic when the battle is truly beginning to pick up. Dear God, look how they massacred my boy. There is one major Sonic character that needs to make a return in the next Sonic game. She's a princess, but absolutely no damsel in distress. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Blaze the Cat, the literal alternate dimension version of Sonic, but with fire. How can you not like this character? Sega has underutilized her for long enough. Blaze starts off in Sonic Rush as a hostile anti-social character who cares about nothing but her quest to protect the Soul Emeralds. That is until she meets Cream the Rabbit, who befriends her and goes on an adventure with her to find the Soul Emeralds that went missing and teleported her to Sonic's dimension. Then she runs into Sonic and the rest is history. She remains an independent character, but she learns how to open up to people and trust her friends. That's some good writing right there. We don't really see Blaze in the modern era after Generations and the Olympic Games until the events of the IDW comic, which means for a whole decade she basically hasn't been in a canon main series Sonic game. Which is just as well, as the writing of the Meta era wouldn't have suited her character. But with us going into a new generation of gaming, and Sonic specifically, now is a good time as ever to bring her back.
The meta era pretty much marked a point where I subconsciously ended up distancing myself from Sonic. Even though I had a Wii and owned a copy of Secret Rings, the Wiimote controls made it very hard for me to actually enjoy the game. This wasn't how I liked to play a Sonic game, and the fact that it was built around this concept didn't help its case. And before anyone yells at me, those are the storybook games, not the meta era. Idiot. I know, I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry. This meant I also decided against Black Knight and Colors for the same reasons. And let me tell you, after playing Colors Ultimate, I'm very glad things happened this way. Because had I played Colors back then, I may never have even taken a chance on Generations. For me, Colors pretty much represents rock bottom for the series, in terms of its storytelling and writing. And look, if you like it, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what to like. I'm just analyzing the differences in Sonic's supporting cast over time. So don't shoot the messenger. For me, Sonic is flat out annoying in this game. Everything he says and does, and the delivery of his whole persona, smacks of try-hard bullshit. I'm not quite sure who this writing and attempts at so-called humor was aimed at, but it definitely wasn't me.
Hey, Tails, you missed the BBBE. Huh? Best boss beating ever. Baldy nose hair. That's the best thing I've heard all day. I gotta remember that one.
No.
Even Tails looks tired of listening to his shit. Speaking of Tails, yeah, he's the only one of Sonic's stupid friends that makes an appearance in this game. He now has his face surgically attached on this giant yellow excuse for a plot device on a permanent basis. Tails is pretty much left to figure out what the Wisps are saying and roll his eyes at Sonic for the whole game. That really is the long and short of it. The Flanderization of Eggman's character and concentrated removal of any real sense of threat from him continues as strong as ever. And if there was any overall message or progression for anyone's character in this game, I must have missed it. Generations also wasn't without its problems on the story and character front, but it gets a pass from me, and I'm guessing many like me, because the gameplay, music, and pure nostalgia factor is just off the scale. Some of the best remixes of existing tracks the series has ever seen were born in this game. And getting to explore some of my favorite locations from past Sonic games again was a genuine pleasure for me after being so disillusioned in the late 2000s. But beyond that, not much else has changed here. What little writing there is still pretty bad, and this game wastes no time at all in thoroughly destroying Eggman any chance it gets. Even his past self can see something ain't right. Sonic's supporting cast do show up in big numbers. It's an anniversary game where they literally throw a party for him, so it's not like they could no-show. But again, they're relegated to the sidelines, where they can continue to be flanderized and cheer their little hearts out for Sonic. Teamwork is effectively dead in the meta era, unless you count teaming up with yourself, I guess. But it's clear that in these games, Sonic doesn't really need his friends anymore, removing all opportunity to utilize his character through leadership, mentorship, or meaningful interactions with others. As a flat character, Sonic needs his friends so he can be at his best. And in turn, Sonic's friends need him to help them through their arcs. Sonic's character simply doesn't work when he's alone. He needs others to bounce off of. Just think for a moment of your favorite moments for Sonic over the years. Was it a throwaway quip at Eggman's expense? A try-hard comment to Tails while he tippy-taps away on his baby's first plot device? Or was it a genuine moment with another character? One who also had a meaningful role in the story, and you were actually emotionally invested in the outcome of the conversation. I know which one it is for me. An isolated Sonic is a hamstrung Sonic, and why anybody ever thought doing this with him was a good idea, I'll never know.
Sonic Adventure was the first Sonic game that truly engrossed me and made me a fan of the series going forward. I say all that because the extended cast of those characters have always been a part of Sonic's identity, at least to me. So it's been tough for me to see Sonic without his extended cast for the better part of 15 years, especially when it comes to not only gameplay mechanics but also story importance. I'm pretty sure that there have been others that have already discussed how the characterization of the extended cast in Forces was, well, undercooked at best and baffling at worst, which I do agree with. As well in that game, you never really feel like you're a part of a bigger team, and that's the point I want to land at. Sonic, at least to me, has always been a team player. The task at hand would not have gotten done if not for the efforts of the rest of the team, and I do miss that aspect of Sonic games. Not only that, but the extended cast could be utilized to explore more gameplay mechanics, whether it's flying, punching, digging, shooting, whatever it is. There is a character to fill that void. I feel like making the extended cast more important in Sonic games again can lead to a lot more pros than cons. So my request for the series going forward is to bring back the characteristic that Sonic is a team player, and that he fully cares for the friends that have made all of these accomplishments possible.
I remember being really hyped for Forces coming out of Sonic Mania. While lacking in detail, the trailers looked promising, giving the impression we were all in for a pretty dark and serious story this time. And on the surface, you could be easily forgiven for thinking this would be the case. Sonic leading a resistance against Eggman, trying to take back the planet from him after he uses the Phantom Ruby and the help of a brand new henchman to successfully take over. I thought we were finally going to see some desperate times for our heroes again, with an actual sense of real peril in the game's atmosphere and writing. But we all know this didn't end up being the case. The relentless neutering and flanderization of Sonic's friends continues unabated. The last time Tails thought Sonic was dead, he opened a can of whoop-ass and laid the smackdown on Eggman. That is the definition of losing it, not whatever the hell this is. Not to mention, Tails had already beaten a more advanced form of chaos in the first adventure game, so why exactly is he so afraid? What this tells me is that all Sonic's mentoring of Tails amounted to in this universe is this. Not, actual character growth and believing in yourself enough to stand on your own 2 feet? God no. Sure, nearly anyone you could think of from the series shows up in this game, but not with any meaningful plan for their involvement in the story, and comes off far more like a box-checking exercise than anything else. Simply there to fill up a room, look sad at the least convincing death you'll ever see, and get a couple of action shots in during the final battle. Glorified cheerleaders. That's all they really are now. Characters who were once pivotal to the overall narrative, now in a role where they could be completely removed from the game and it would make absolutely no difference. What a sad state for a series to be in. Knuckles had a solid chance to lead the Resistance as a playable character during Sonic's brief absence.
Nope.
Okay, fair enough, might require different playstyles and a lot of development time. How about Shadow?
Nope.
Oh, he's wafer-thin DLC. What we've been told now for quite some time really, is that Sonic doesn't need his friends anymore. Sure, they might show up from time to time as glorified plot devices, something to point him in the right direction or whatever, but as far as meaningful involvement in the story, with a hands-on part we all get to see and experience, honestly, feels like we couldn't be further away from a time where this was even a thing. And that really sucks.
The stories of the last decade's worth of Sonic games have gotten, let's just say, not great reception, both in and out of the fanbase. And I feel like one of the biggest factors in that decline of quality is his lack of a supporting cast. Sonic is a flat character. I've made a whole video about that on my channel, but to summarize, a flat character essentially is a character who doesn't develop in the typical arc fashion. Instead, they have firm beliefs that hold strong throughout the entire story, but those strong beliefs in fact change the world around them, rather than them changing themselves. But a flat archetype doesn't necessarily work that great whenever they're on their own. In Sonic stories like Sonic Colors, Lost World, even Generations to an extent, Sonic is essentially the main focus and the only other characters around are Tails and Eggman. Eggman is also a flat character. He never changes or develops because he's always up to the same scheme, taking over the world and building the Eggman Empire. But as entertaining as those characters are, there's a reason that in something like Dragon Ball, for instance, Vegeta is often more popular than Goku. Although I disagree with that popular belief, I easily see why Vegeta is the preferred character. It's because he changes over the series with well-written arcs. Characters who are perfect or always evil aren't as easy to relate to as a naturally growing character. It's the same reason that Shadow is often more popular than Sonic, because Shadow started as a villain and then eventually grew to a hero. The reason I bring this all up and the point I'm trying to make is that often a flat character is at their best when supplementing another character's arc. Shadow would not be the hero we know today without Sonic's personality. Tails would not have grown and matured without Sonic's encouragement. Knuckles would not have seen the error of his ways without Sonic being unrelenting in his mission to stop Eggman, and embracing Knuckles as a friend even though Knuckles was after his neck throughout all of their first encounter. The reason that Sonic's friends are important is simply because they offer a lot to a story and supplement Sonic as Sonic supplements their character arcs. Sonic is not a deep character, and that's why throughout the entire last decade, like I've been saying, the stories feel so cookie-cutter. They could honestly be the same plots in a classic title and you wouldn't really lose anything. But if you start adding in characters like Vector, Espio, Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, all of those characters with their unique personalities and lots of room to develop because they are not flat characters, you could really have Sonic supplement their arc and they would supplement Sonic's character. They would complement each other perfectly and really help a great story grow. Characters going through arcs make a flat character look better, and a flat character is doing their job whenever they're helping other characters in their arcs. And frankly, there's a reason that people keep clamoring for the characters to return anyway. It's because they have interesting personalities as is. There is so much room for great storytelling in the Sonic series, and the only way to truly make it happen is to embrace its larger ensemble cast. Outside of their narrative purposes, I think that just playing as these characters would be really fun. Each one of them has such a unique personality, like I said, so their own animations and moves would honestly just be something to behold and really fun to mess around with. So I think that Sega needs to really step their game up on this one because it's no secret why the fans want Sonic's cast back, and that's why I think they're so important, because of their great purpose in both narrative storytelling and in gameplay.
When I decided to put this video together and reached out to all these awesome creators who were kind enough to give up their time to talk Sonic characters, all I said was talk a bit about why the supporting cast of Sonic is important to you. That was it. There was no direction beyond that. And yet, there was still a common theme among pretty much everyone's account. In so many words, Sonic is a flat character. one who is supplemented by his friends, as they allow him to shine brightest when helping them through their narrative arcs. Sonic elevates those around him to new heights. That has always been his greatest ability. He turned Tails into a true hero, teaching him to believe in himself and embrace his gifts. He taught Knuckles that not all outsiders are enemies, bringing this naive and introverted guardian out of isolation and making him part of the team. I don't know, for me, watching Knuckles steadily loosen up and come out of his shell over time was just one of those weirdly adorable and endearing moments in the series. One I probably read into more than most other people, but special for me nonetheless. And while a lot of the credit for Shadow's growth actually goes to himself, alongside Team Dark of course, Shadow's rivalry with Sonic in Adventure 2 actually helped crack the armor of his external zero emotions charade. And watching him begrudgingly come to admire and respect Sonic, and the competitive side of him that sneaked out whenever they were around each other, was really cool to see. Sonic brings out the best in those around him, a very special characteristic, let's be honest, and robbing him of this by taking away his friends is just downright stupid in my opinion. People relate and sympathize most with characters when they actually get to see and experience their struggles, whether it be through meaningful storytelling or in games, actually getting to play as them. This is why characters like Shadow were so popular, and this is why people are now screaming for Sonic's friends to return. Pretty much every company wants to build an expansive universe for their IPs now. There is a redonkulous amount of money in it, and it's an extremely popular format of entertainment, ensuring many different avenues for stories and opportunities to expand on different characters. But with the way things are for Sonic right now, Sega have kinda missed the boat on this trend. You can't really have a universe with just one character, and this represents such a missed opportunity. But if I'm reading the signs right, I think Sega might be starting to realize this. I mean, it has to be hard for them to argue with how well the movie universe is taking off and how popular it is. People lost their friggin' shit when Knuckles appeared in the second movie trailer. Both people who knew he was going to appear and people who knew nothing about the movie. That is the power and potential these characters have. And with Sonic Prime just around the corner too, promising its very own multiverse, there is a lot of opportunity in the expanded media for Sonic's supporting cast to absolutely kill it. Whether or not Frontiers will take any of these lessons on board and actually act on any of them is another question entirely. We'll just have to wait and see. I'd like to thank all of my special guests who were kind enough to donate their time to fight the good fight for Sonic's friends. You'll find a link to all of their channels in the description, so be sure to check them out if you have a chance. They make some seriously awesome content, so you won't regret it. I know I only got to skim the surface for a lot of these characters in this video, but with the huge time period we had to cover, and all the awesome special guests, the video quickly turned into a behemoth. But this is only the second part of a series. I'll be covering characters, artifacts, and events on an individual level from here on out, so we'll be back getting into the darkest recesses of the series again soon. Don't worry. I'm also really eager to hear about all of your favorite moments for these characters in the series, so be sure to let me know in the comments about any particular moments that are special to you, and what you might like to see happen with your favorite characters going forward. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of the great topics I have in the pipeline, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon to be notified when new videos go live. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like on it too. All of those simple clicks go a long way, and any support you guys show, as always, is seriously appreciated by me. A big thank you for watching, and as always guys, take care.